I make art because I think it's one of the purest expressions that get us closer to understand who we are. I think I make art also because I don't know what else I could do. I think I always knew I had to be an artist. I don't think I ever knew exactly why, but I knew I had to be an artist.
Okay, welcome to episode 3 of Lo-Fi Podcast. I'm still in Leiden, the Netherlands, and tonight I'm sitting down with Santiago Pani. Santiago is one of the, I don't know, how would you put your position here?
Well, one of the hosts.
There you go, of Arthouse Holland, right? Yeah. And you're working with Dan and Daniel in the project 1606?
Totally.
Okay. Yeah. So actually, instead of me saying it, why don't I just turn it over to you? Like, what is it that you're doing here, and what's your relationship with the Arthouse Project 1606 residency and Dan and Daniel?
All right, perfect. Well, the residency project, which is Arthouse Holland, the one that is like running all year long. That one, I direct that project. That's a project I started almost 6 years ago, and we moved it from Madrid to Leiden 3 years ago. And that's a project I'm running with Manon right now, with my girlfriend. On the other hand, the 1606 project was like a special month of the residency where we invited you guys, like the international artists with a lot of a little bit more positioned in the market, or like artists that are already have something to show, and we have something to learn from them. And so I'm also hosting that together with Dan and Daniel. And yeah, that's it. That's what I am.
So now I'm thinking of things that I don't already know. How did you meet Dan and John? Because I know the two of them met on Instagram, which I think is it's cool, but also kind of funny. Like, they said their stories, like, I don't know, it almost sounded like when you have a crush on somebody in a weird way, like, I'm going to message them. But I think you guys met the same way, didn't you?
Was it on
similar,
Instagram? Man. Yeah,
That's
it was
so
similar.
Funny. That's cool.
It was funny, like, because I first saw Daniel's work in an exhibition, and I really liked the work, but the same way that you like works of artists all the time, and it doesn't mean you're going to end up meeting them. Right. But then I saw his work a year after in another show, and I liked it a lot, and I was like, okay, it's the same guy. I should try to contact him. And then I got in I got in contact with him through Instagram as well. But just after I sent him the message, he came to our place like the next day. And we had a bottle of mezcal, and we became like super good friends.
It's always involving booze, because that's what Dan told me. It was over a beer, and he had told Claire, like, I'll probably be gone just an hour, and like 5 hours later, and so many beers. He's like, this guy's super cool.
Well, it was a little bit like that. I think
that's cool.
It's funny how it started as from like out of respect or like admiration from each other's work.
Yeah,
but
that's
it
great.
Really got into a nice friendship that we're trying to build up things together now, instead of just like admiring each other's work.
Yeah, because you guys are really now, the air that I get, and I mean, you've been open with this, you guys are also kind of in a sense like now all business partners too. You're artistic friends, inspire each other, but you're working as a business almost.
Yeah, like in a way we've realized that I don't know, the art market is so unstable and the economy of an artist can be sometimes very unstable, that we have realized that we can try to do new things to fight against that. You know, like we're trying to help each other to work as a team to be able to approach bigger projects and trying to make this the best out of this and get the most we can. Like, for example, like recently we had a show in Rome, and the guys were so busy that I ended up going, but it was amazing because I was representing the work of the three of us, not only mine. So then while I was gone, they were being represented. I was still being represented back home because I know that anytime they have the chance they talk about my work with galleries or with clients or whatever. So it's like realizing that you have support, which is the nicest part.
Yeah, you got each other's backs in that sense. And if one person can't step up to the plate, another person can.
Yeah. I think that's a little bit of the nicest part of it.
Yeah, your partners in the truest sense, it seems like.
Yeah, totally. And like we're trying to do every time more things together. Sometimes obviously it's not the easiest because there's our individual projects. Like for example, Dan now it's about to have a solo show that he has been working on for a while. And on the other side, like I'm thinking about, I don't know, organizing a trip of the three of us to Mexico to do more exploration on the creative aspects and also have some fun and stuff. But obviously he can't. So at the end, we also are meeting in the middle and see how far we can bring it as a group and in how other things we can't, because obviously we work as individual artists.
Yeah.
We don't consider ourselves a collective. Like it's more like a group, no?
Right. For now.
Yes.
And man, there's so much to like touch on here. Like that conversation we're having earlier, I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about all these other things. But I think real quick, since you brought up Mexico, because that's where you were born?
I was born in Mexico.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to start there real quick and just get a little of your background.
Yeah.
And your tie to Mexico. So yeah, just a little bit of that. So in Mexico, how did you get into what you're doing?
So I was born in Mexico City, and my parents and I, my family and I, we moved to Tequisquiapan, to this tiny village. And then when I was 18, I said like I cannot have more of this, and I went abroad. I went on a trip to Europe.
More of this just mean Mexico?
More than...
What did you mean? Like you can't have any more of this?
Of Mexico.
You were
village.
Done. Yeah, when you're 18.
I was done with my
It was that
village,
small?
Man.
It was that small?
It's very small. Like for Mexican standards, it's quite small.
Okay.
But it was like my first test of what Europe is and what the art, the European art is, and I really wanted to be part of that. So I decided to study art in Paris back in the day, and,
nice.
But I didn't.
Oh, okay. I was like, man, I didn't know this. You didn't tell me this yet. Okay, so you didn't.
My grandfather was an architect, and he studied in the Beaux-Arts, Beaux-Arts, and I said like I can probably do that. But I really missed Mexico again, so I went back. I think I was not old enough to approach that.
That's young, 18?
Yeah, I think I was. So then I just went back to Mexico, and I applied to the art school in Mexico City. I got accepted, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think it's an amazing school.
Yeah.
But then I still wanted to be part of the European art scene, or at least see what it had for me, or what could I give to it. So so I didn't take that away from me, and I just decided to move to Europe just after I finished.
And where did you move to?
I moved to Madrid.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was like the easiest bridge between Mexico and Europe, and the language barriers that you can get in other places, and cultural wise also we have a lot in common. And I really loved it. I loved Madrid.
Madrid's awesome.
It's awesome.
It's a beautiful place.
But also I got a bit tired of how things were. I think the artists in Madrid are so freaking amazing, but they are a bit stuck in the idea of the recession of like somehow 10 years ago or something. They are angry with the system, and they are and I don't know, in Mexico we really know how that goes, so we are used to it. We make things happen for ourselves. So having this constant reminder of how things are not working out, and realizing that the artists were not really doing much about it, it got me a bit tired. I'm not saying in general, but in some cases. And then the opportunity came up for moving the project to Manon's family old cheese farm.
Where we're at now.
Where we're at right now. And I was like, man, this could be the best residency I've ever seen.
It's an
if we make
place.
It work.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful place. Like there's a lot of space for working, and there's also like so well connected with all the other big cities in Holland, but also close to Belgium. You can go easily to Antwerp or to Brussels, or you can go to Paris. Like it's well connected, and it's something, but it's still pretty isolated in the nature that you feel like you can have, I don't know, like a creative escape, but without leaving like the possibilities of going to an exhibition, visit a museum, like. So I think it's pretty convenient.
Yeah, and you're only 30 minutes from Amsterdam.
Yeah, 30 minutes from Amsterdam,
places.
15 minutes from Leiden city center. So yeah, it's super connected. But still, like I do feel like you're close to nature, which is something I really wanted. Like as I told you, I grew up in a small village, so for me this is also important, no, to have the quiet and the.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and yeah, it's nice to have artists from all over the world come here and share this place with them, no?
Yeah. How long have you guys been here doing this?
Like this, we got here almost 3 years ago, a bit over 3 years ago.
Wow, you've been there for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think Manon was telling me you do it 10 months out of the year.
We do 10 months out of the year because, one of the things is that Holland can be really cold in winter, so the studios in the outside are not very, very usable anymore.
Oh, okay.
And I also, as I told you, I'm so attached to Mexico still that I use those 2 months out of the year to go and spend a bit of a longer period in Mexico.
Oh, okay. Nice. So you guys both will go from here to Mexico?
Usually we do. This year I'm going by myself, and we're spending like the holidays here in Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Europe. But yeah, usually both of us would go, and yeah, man, it's super nice. We escape the cold weather.
Perfect.
And we have a studio there. We invested like a year ago on creating Arthouse in Mexico, and it's about to be finished. So next month that I go there, I'm gonna check out all the final details of the residency.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're gonna be even more connected to Mexico because we're gonna have to be going and check out how the residency is running.
Yeah. So wait, so when you say get finished, you're talking about a different residency. So you're going to be hosting a residency in Mexico and hosting a residency here.
Yeah, like my father is an artist as well, and I convinced them a year ago that it would be amazing to do the second art house in our hometown, and then they accepted and they allowed me to build it in their own land. So my mom is gonna host it. My dad is gonna guide and share with the artists as what is my role here.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be amazing.
Because having him there, I mean, he's got decades on anybody of experience.
It's crazy.
So he's willing to impart that information and what he knows. And
all his network, all his like know-how, and like he came last year to the residency here with us,
Yeah.
and he realized how amazing it can be to share time with other creatives. It's something that it's hard to explain if you don't live it by your own.
Sure, that totally makes sense. Yeah.
So then he saw it. We used that to convince him. Like after he came,
Exposure therapy.
Yeah. And then he liked the idea. Now we're, if everything goes well next month, we're gonna do the first official residency month in Mexico, and we want to start with half a year. Like I don't want to push it too hard on them if they don't enjoy it as much as we do.
Only doing it for 6 months.
Only doing it for 6 months a year at the beginning. If they do like it and it's working out and everything goes smooth, then we can do it for the whole year. But
nice.
At least the beginning is going to be slower.
Nice.
Yeah, and we're going to be able to host at the beginning at least 4 artists per month. And well, it's going to be exactly the same cost as it is in here, but we're going to be able to offer the artists way more because the prices in Mexico are lower in general, like from food and services to whatever. So it's going to be a bit of a more luxurious experience for the artists, like more artists would go to get a bit spoiled. That is something that I would like to get that, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So then why not offering it to other artists? So that's going to be a bit the idea.
That's amazing. As you're talking about these, I'm wondering what's the incentive behind doing this? Because it's a lot of work. I've seen you guys, because admittedly this is the first residency I've done, and I've seen how much you guys put into it and how much it takes away from your own work.
Yeah.
So why even put all that into it?
Yeah, like,
and I don't mean that to sound like a defeatist way. I'm just wondering, like, really, like, what's the intention behind it?
No, I totally feel what you're saying. Like, just when I finished the art school, I think that's something I forgot to tell you. Like, I got invited to an artist residency in Belgium.
Okay.
I went there and I thought it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life, or how I ever felt in my life, to be sharing 24/7 with other amazing artists, learning from each other and stuff. It was really like a breakthrough in my life, because I thought, this is how I want to live my life, like surrounded with people that I will be constantly learning, and also that I can offer something to them, like I can teach whatever I've learned and learn from teaching, because I think that's one of the best ways to learn. Yeah. So I was confronted with that idea, and I immediately thought, okay, I'm gonna start my own residency. I obviously didn't know how much work it was. Like, I don't know if I would do it.
It's a lot of work.
Now everything is pretty much sorted out. So I think opening a second one is not going to be as hard as to what it was to open.
Sure,
the
it's
first
like
one.
anything. You do it once, you do it twice.
But it was a whole journey. Like, for example, the one in Spain, we really had an amazing place. The conditions of the studios were amazing, but the marketing of we knew no one in Europe. Like, so it was hard to show the people what we had, and then by those means it didn't work. Like, and then when it started working, that we started to know people that helped us with that, we were a bit done with the place. We said, like, this is not probably gonna grow till the place that we want it to grow, so let's just start over, use this what we've learned to make the next one amazing, and then that's what we did. I also realized that by sharing time with other artists, my production becomes way more interesting. Like, it's not just about, like, for example, I learned so many different things from artists that I've spent time with in the residency, that it keeps me excited about creating. It keeps me like entertained and like talking about very random aspects with the artists, from their production to their beliefs or to their political ideals or whatever. It's just like it keeps you like wondering and learning and whatever, and it's nice. Sometimes they are very stubborn and it's hard to socialize.
Artists are tough people, I think, to deal with at times. They're strong personality. Yeah, sometimes. It's funny that you said the thing about learning, like emphasizing that, because as I'm doing this podcast, so I started this one, a friend of mine in the US who has a podcast, I think I told you about it. We're stitching it together. So he'll send me little bits of him talking, and then I respond.
You reply when you have time.
Yeah. And it's a really cool experience. But he brought up, because I used to teach, and then he's really curious about this residency. So I've actually been talking a lot with him about the residency. And he brought up like asking me like what I want to teach and why am I doing a residency. And that's exactly what I hit on is, I know when you teach, you do learn from students, but not on the same scale that you do around other artists. And it's exactly the thing I said to him is I'd rather be a lifelong student and constant. And it's really selfish when you think about it, but it's a good position.
But it is a very good position.
Yeah, and so I can understand from your point of view, because I was telling him here, and this is going to lead into a question, because he was asking me like, what is it like around the other artists? How do you learn? And I had to reflect on that. I wasn't thinking about it as much, and I realized that for me, my experience has been in the times not making art. I learn more when we have breakfast. I learn more at dinner. I learn more when I'm passing somebody on the driveway and we talk for 5 minutes. Like, those are the things I'm picking up from people. Like, what is it for you? Because you got to share your studio with other artists.
Yeah, man. Like, I totally understand what you mean. Like, back to the experience I had in the other residency, like, it was an amazing experience. But one thing I didn't like is that they forced the artists to meet at 5 p.m. of every Tuesday to talk about their process and their progress as well. Like, what have they done and what have they accomplished. And I really disliked it because it was like, I didn't want that day to arrive, like every week. I was like, shit, I prefer to be working and talking to them and learning from each other or whatever, or just doing my own thing. But I don't want to be confronted with that, at least in this residency. So when I decided to open my own, I said, I'm gonna offer the artists breakfast from Monday to Friday, and that way they're gonna talk about their process.
Yep. Yeah, man.
It's totally like it's not forced. Everyone has or wants to have breakfast, and they will sit together every morning. Eventually, they will talk. So I think it's way more like a natural way of getting the creatives together, because obviously sometimes right now we are all Walter's a sculpture artist, but we are all at the studio, like we're all painting and at the studio. Sometimes we get photographers or that leave the house as soon as they finish breakfast and they don't come back till so the interaction between the residents would be hard. So then with the breakfast or with the going out for a drink or going out for a walk or whatever is where you actually start learning from the others. Yeah. Like, for example, one of the things I really learned from one of the artists, I took this guy to the art supply store, and he started like grabbing every single material he could, and then at the end of the shopping, like he spent more than what the residency costed. Like in one day, like he spent like so much money in the material, and I was like, man, what the hell? This is crazy. And then he told me like, man, if you don't have the tools, how can you make the work? Then it's something that obviously I don't approach to my materials that way, but at least it got me thinking and realizing like, man, I need to pay more attention in what I'm of the tools I'm using and this kind of thing. So for example, next time I went to the art supply store for my own materials, I realized that I had learned something. very
Yeah.
small, but I learned something.
It's
you know,
small,
like,
but with a big impact.
yeah, and
bigger
it had a
than
totally
you
big
realize.
impact. Like now, if you see my studio is messy with so much stuff, but but it's nice
And
because
you
I
have a lot of supplies.
a lot. Of
And you're a tool guy, right? It's right.
I love
You're the
tools.
tool guy.
I love supplies. Yeah, but so like yeah, that's like probably like a weird example, but you learn a lot from sharing time with other artists for sure.
Yeah. I don't think it's that weird of an example. I mean, maybe some people can't relate to it, but that's exactly how it's been for me. It's not like I learned a new way to mix colors or a new way to, it's
Yeah,
been more things of like mentally like, or attitude. This is how I
Yeah.
should approach this because so and so, like maybe Walter has a better professional approach to something that I don't. And
Yeah.
just during breakfast, he said something that clicked with me, you know?
Totally.
It's
Yeah.
been simple things like that.
Yeah, it's I think it can also like talking about that. It can be yeah, like a knife with two how you call it, like
We say a double-edged sword.
double-edged sword.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you are not super sure about your creative process or about your identity as an artist, and then you go to a place where you're like getting so much information from others, and it really changes the way you approach to your own creation, I think that can be dangerous. Like I don't know,
That's a good point.
I try not to learn the things that I might not want to learn, but that's also hard. Like for example, right now, having you there at the entry of the studio, Dan open, Andrew Salgado in the back, Walter coming by, Daniel, like it's like, oh man, like how can you not learn from all these people? But also it's like constantly asking to yourself, how can I also not steal things or make things that are totally dams into my work? So then it's like putting also an effort to not, I don't know, like copy stuff or whatever. You have to know what to learn, like, and I think that's also the hardest thing, because you are at the end sharing a super intimate thing, like your creative process that you usually
You've been doing it for years. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
something you've worked on. But I wonder at the same time, do you think it's bad that how do I word this? Of course you don't want to steal, but let's say like there's always gestation and process. So say like I'm looking at something Dan's doing, and then either consciously or unconsciously I do something
Start using
very
it.
similar. Yeah. And then that first time it's gonna look like I'm referencing Dan.
Yeah.
But if I keep to do it, it could be something that looks different to Dan that I've now incorporated.
Yeah, if you
You
think
know?
it like that, when have we not done that? No, like
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
Is that's
yeah,
really
yeah.
what your process is. No
Totally.
one lives on an island. It's like you're stand on the shoulder of giants.
It's totally that, but also I think what I was trying to explain is that you have to do it as long as it makes sense to you.
Gotcha. Okay,
Because
okay.
then it's like I have seen it in other residencies, like in other residents. Sorry, like I have. When I started the project, I thought to myself that this play has to be open for emerging artists as well for well-established artists.
Okay.
Because I think the interaction is actually very interesting when a guy that has been in the business for longer teaches something to the others, and as well learn from this new generation or whatever.
Yeah.
No. And I have seen that they take what they've learned very literally, like, and I don't know if that's what they want, or that they were willing to get from an experience like this. So yeah, it's easier to say what I learned, but I don't know what people usually take from it.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be different for
Yeah.
everybody, right?
Yeah.
It kind of depends on where you're at in your art and where you're at in your life.
Totally.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think as soon as it makes sense to you, and you can learn so much from every other artist.
Right. When you're saying though, as soon as it makes sense, do you mean like that you're aware of it? Like how are you meaning that?
Probably yes. Probably that's what I mean. But also probably probably doesn't make too much sense. But for example, I really I usually spend so much time with Dan and Daniel, and both of their processes are so different. No, Daniel is way much more about exploring material and going super crazy with color and concept and plasters and stuff. Dan's work is way more clean, is way more accurate, and totally based on a background of geometry and physics and math and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I admire their work so much, and I think I find myself somewhere in between. No, I really
I can see that,
let my work go a bit wild in having the idea of randomness or of letting the materials work by themselves to tell a story, but also with some rules that I decided to put.
Mm-hmm.
No? As I find myself in between, I know that I get a lot from them. I'm constantly learning and using things. If I turn to the left and I see Dan using something, I might use it on my work.
Mm-hmm.
But if I feel detached from my work because I think it starts feeling too much like his work, I think I would not be comfortable with it myself.
Okay, I fully understand.
So I think that's mainly why I think that it has to make sense. Because if you don't do it for your own self, then why would you even do it?
Okay, so you're saying so the opposite of that would be if you're just blindly doing what somebody else is doing without thought, or maybe based on insecurity, or you have no other. Okay,
totally,
totally. And I remember saying, you see that in school with
for
painters
sure
all the time,
Yeah, and I think everyone has probably done that. You admire sometimes something so much that you want to make it as similar or close to it.
Yeah.
But then we need to find our own pictorial language that people can say, oh fuck, that's a John Wentz. That's not a Santiago Pani. That's a John Wentz. So then you were okay. And if you
certainly don't want looks like John Wentz has been hanging out with Santiago Pani a little bit.
Totally.
That would be a bad thing. You know what's funny is I've never met, and I mean this as the greatest of compliments to both Daniel and Dan, I have never met two artists whose process is so much like their personalities.
Totally, man.
You know what I mean?
I didn't think about
Daniel, it hit me on day 2. Daniel he always seems to be juggling 40 things at once. And he's drinking coffee, and then he's smoking, and then he's walking here and there. And then I was looking at his work, and that's exactly how he is. He juggles all these materials.
Totally.
And then Dan is quiet, thoughtful, a very sweet human being. And then I watch him paint, and he's so careful, exacting. It's been so fascinating to see those two.
Yeah, man.
And unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of time because you were gone. But it is funny because the last 2 days I was watching your work. And I think you're right. You're one quite literally in the middle of their working spaces.
Literally,
where Andrew's there now. But you seem like the fulcrum in the middle of the scales, just kind of balancing both. It's really cool, and I mean that as great compliment.
It totally makes sense. Yeah. It also, for some reason, in our group, I became that part. I for example, whenever there's a decision that has to be made and they both have very, very opposite points of view, I have to be the one that makes them fall into
you're the
center and balance things out. And
that's cool. That's why you guys all worked good together then.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, man, why? I'm the youngest, man. Come on.
Why me?
Why me?
Should be my responsibility.
Yeah,
that's so funny. But with that, I do want to talk about your work too, because I love your work.
Thanks,
and I mean, it's been killer to see it in person, and also it's interesting too. It only hit me the other day of how fortunate it is to see people's work like this in different contexts. Meaning not just in the gallery. If I had heard of you and went to a show, it's different than now we're sitting here doing a podcast and your work is in the corner, and I can see it in a different context.
Yeah, totally.
And
Probably in a context that is more familiar for what I actually made it for.
It's where you made it. It's what inspired you, but it's also more comfortable. Like galleries to me, it tends to be. I always feel like, not always, but I often feel like before here I was in Dusseldorf, and I remember one day I went to the K21, and it hit me how much architecture will affect my experience, and maybe that's very more obvious to some people, but the architecture of that building is way different than a lot of museums I went to, and I found myself questioning my opinions on things because of it. Like I was looking at a piece of artwork, and my initial reaction was like, I think this is not good, but because of this environment and the architecture, it gives it this air of authority where I'm like, I just don't know enough, you know. So it's nice, like it's a really weird experience to be here where you're comfortable. Yeah. On all levels, like we're having a beer, we're around people I enjoy, and then there's artwork here, and I feel like I can see it without bias, experience it without bias, you know?
Yeah, I think that's like as we were talking before, like galleries sometimes don't get the work that we are more passionate about, but they get the work that they know they can sell, and that sometimes it's. Sometimes you will meet artists that you'll find out they have work that you've never seen before. Because
I'm so surprised how much I come across that now.
Yeah, and that's amazing. Like that's why visiting someone's studio or getting to know an artist or something is so interesting, because you actually get to see a part that you will never see any other way. Yeah. And here you get that a lot. Like like at the end we're just artists hanging out together. Like you can call it a project, you can call it this and that, but at the end that's what we are, and I think it's the nicest of it, because once you come and realize that as another artist, then you're like, man, I also become part of it. It's not like it's me, Dan, and Daniel against the others or whatever. It's not like, no, let's make it bigger. Like we are all now part of this.
And that's something we were talking about earlier, and maybe we can kind of hit on that, is you were talking about Mexico and the community and alternatives to galleries. Like, is that something that started there for you? Like, what planted that seed thinking like that?
Yeah, like, I think, as I told you before, like in Mexico, we are a bit used to do things by our own, like, hands or by our own means. Like we are not waiting for the institution to support our project or to finance it or whatever, because we know it's not going to happen. So then we have realized, like me together with some other amazing artists, that the way to grow is by creating community, like helping each other out. And well, with these guys in Mexico, they run this project, No es una galería, which means like this is not a gallery, which was like a counter offer or like antithesis of what a gallery is. It's like giving back.
And that's Ricardo, right?
That's Ricardo, yeah, okay. Ricardo Santos and Pierre Fudarilli. Like they both started this, and it's like one of those projects that I'm always so happy to talk about, because it's about giving the power back to the artist. Like this power that has been taken out by gallerists, curators, art dealers, like all the market, all the art sphere, which is like, we always say the same, like we don't deny them. We know they are important and we need them, but we want to show that it's not the only way. Like artists, if we get together, we can create amazing stuff, and we can generate so much more than what a gallery can even give. And with this idea in mind, like we have been doing shows, we have organized art fairs, shows, gatherings with artists, and people see that it's like such a like a legit and honest project that they just join. Like it's not like we're even trying to drag a lot of attention or whatever. Like we're
not
just
recruiting
no, it's just like artists see that it's like super nice, and then they join, and the community grows bigger, and the community at the same at the same way that you were asking me, like what do I get from the residency, or what do I get for working to create a community with other artists, at the end you get so much, man. Like you get like you get network, you get clients at the end, you get like your sales improve, your name grows bigger, your reputation it's also nicer, because you're not only an artist looking for yourself.
Yeah.
You look for others, and then that's what needs to happen. No?
Right. Yeah. And I liked what you were saying earlier too about because I think it was specifically with regard to clients, how you all are sharing each other's clients. And what didn't you say, like if somebody has a show, then the other artists will alert their clients that, hey, there's this artist is having a show? Is that what you were saying?
That's what we do. Like for example, they started this WhatsApp group about for example helping each other, and that's probably super common, happens everywhere. But we use it a lot for inviting each other to expos and blah blah blah. But also we say like, okay, this galleries is being an asshole, he hasn't paid me, like you should not work with him.
Nice. Okay.
And then the community is starting to grow so much that we are starting to have a big impact in what the market is. And the thing is that when we organize shows, everyone brings their clients. So let's say we do a collective exhibition with 35 artists or 40 artists. Then each one brings, let's say, 20 people or 10 potential collectors. Then sales happen, no? And then the amazing part is like they only take like 10% off. So then it's like all the money is for the artists, and yeah, just
but you also are keeping that client base, how do I word it, open to each other, right? Like whereas, for example, I'd say like there's a trend that we've seen in the last like 5 years plus of galleries doing that, right? Okay, we're gonna have a 50 artist exhibition, but then they're like, okay, now everybody send out your email blast, make sure to post on your social media, and what happens ultimately is that gallery now gains all that collector base, and now they own it. They've expanded their end, but you haven't expanded your own.
Man, it's crazy because I have been in exhibitions with galleries like that, and when a galleries tell me like, okay, man, then you invite your clients, it's like, then why do I need you?
Exactly.
You know? Like in this scenario, it's not like that. Like I'm saying we are, but it's mainly they are. I'm part of the community, and I'm so happy to be part of it. But they're so open and so like clear, like transparent with the information that every artist can access to all the data.
That's so
like
amazing. Yeah, because try and imagine like doing that type of show at the gallery, and then be like, okay, now that the show's done, can I have everybody's collected all those emails from the other 49 artists? It's like no.
And it's crazy because like to the shows that we've organized, there's galleries coming, and art, like people in the art scene are coming and they're checking it out because they say like, okay, this is happening. And this a little bit started as a counter offer to galleries, and to one specific gallery, and these galleries are actually coming to the shows, and they're saying like, fuck, this is what we could have done, but we didn't do it.
Right.
And it's amazing because as it's run by artists and it's for artists, the artists are not like determined or blocked to show one or other thing. They can just choose what to show. So then you see actually the interesting or like part of the creative side of the artists.
Right.
Because they are not like limited by the gallery saying, okay, I only need you to show this because this is what sells. They can do whatever they want. So you see like sometimes very dark, funky shows, but I love them, man, because it's like, this is also part of it. Like it's not only pretty decorative pieces. Like
I can see where that kind of, because admittedly I think we've all seen where people's careers or shows from a gallery, that fine line between art and product starts to slip over to product.
Yeah.
You know, that production line thing. And something like that, you're more willing to take a risk to be more expressive, or
for sure.
You know, but Also, so I think you're maybe also one of the most humble people the most humble person I've ever met. Because we're still not talking about your work, which is what I want to talk about.
All
We
right.
just went on another thing. We started to. I'm curious. So I've seen the stuff you're doing right now in the studio, but my introduction is like the stuff we're looking at now, which people can't see, which is based off of this one figurehead.
Yeah.
What's the genesis of it? Because I love it so much, and I love the way you've adapted it into these different mediums. Like we're looking at a piece right now that's a painting with neon on top. You've done this in metal sculpture.
Yeah.
How did this come about?
Like I was so into portraits since I was very, very young, and it was a little bit of the idea back in art school that the art theory teachers asked us to come up with a statement of that would guide our artistic practice.
Mm-hmm.
In that time, I didn't really understand it. I was like, well, I'm an artist because I want to be an artist. Like, what do you mean? And the artists that I know, like my father's friends and stuff, like they come from the like abstract expressionists, and it's more about like the art for the art, and it's like, I don't know, like there's not much to conceptualize about what it actually is. So for me it was a bit hard, but then I realized that these faces were constantly coming into my interest, that there had to be something behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I read this theory about there's like this psychological theory that says that every person we see through our lives, apparently it gets stored somewhere in our subconscious, like the image of their faces.
Yeah.
And when we're dreaming about people that we don't really know who they are, like you can sometimes dream and say, I know I've seen this person before, but I have no idea what's their name or where they come from or whatever. Okay. This theory believes that you connect with your subconscious in that moment, and like these people from probably this person that you probably saw like 20 years ago, it comes to that dream, and you have no idea why, but it's like a way of your brain unconscious side connecting with the conscious side, and then you dream about this.
Okay.
Like I was amazed with this like idea, and then I tried to approach to these characters or these portraits like from like a very very visceral way, like without thinking too much about someone in particular, and it was like an exercise trying to connect with the subconscious. No. Then these characters started appearing, and for me these characters are like really really important because they are not necessarily one person in particular, but they represent someone that have gotten that my life get to a certain point that we are now sitting here right now having this conversation, doing this podcast. So I don't know, like I would say like an oda, I don't know how you call it, like a monument for humanity or something like that.
I don't know the exact word, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's
or it's almost like an archetype in a sense.
Yeah,
maybe,
it's totally like. But for example, like let's say that 10 years ago you crossed someone in the street that made you stop before a red light, and then that's why the car didn't run over you. No, that definitely determined your destiny, and it determined like what happened to you and why we are sitting here right now, because that car didn't run over you. You know?
Right.
So it's like this person, you probably don't even know who it is, but it made you change your life. So like that's like the power I decide to give to these faces. You know? Like, so it's like I don't know. It's they always have this same like sort of structure, because it helps me to start it over. It's like the excuse to create this vertical and transversal line, and then like the eyes, like this very it has become something so natural to me. But then they are all pretty much similar, but each one of them has its own identity.
Right. No, that makes sense. It did strike me as very like archetypal, and also it kind of reminds me a lot of like primitive masks, which I think have that same quality, and that's really was kind of their intention, is to hit upon an archetype, because it seems, and maybe I'm wrong, but in reading them, you're more it looks more interested in gesture than form.
Totally.
The flatness and texture seems to be really important to that. And one of the things I love is there'll be these really intense impasto brushstrokes, but you use spray paint underneath.
Yeah.
What got you into them? Because, am I wrong that your background is in printmaking?
Yeah, totally.
It is
printmaking,
okay.
And I was pretty like addicted to monoprint and to see like
Nice.
the textures that come out from when you lift the paper and you realize what the hell happened.
Yeah.
In the
So you're
time
very
it-
texture based.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Nice.
So it's like the texture is so important to me. I like to think that any of these portraits could work even if you just take a little part away from it, like these microcosmos that starts happening in one painting.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking, I think, when you gave your workshop about how you get like these big attraction points that makes you like go into a painting, but then you have the details that
The impact and payoff thing.
the impact and the payoff.
Yeah.
I really like that the payoff. It's very interesting, and that you can really like dig into it and start creating like a relationship with the painting, because at the end it's meant to be that. It's a portrait that talks about human relations, about as you say, it obviously has to do with a mask, because a mask, you use it to hide or to empower something, or to become something you're not, and even our faces are like these masks that we show people what we want them to see. Like it has so many like influences and concepts that got me to keep doing them, which I didn't even know before. Like I was like, how can I find out a statement that then will guide my artwork? I think it has to be like I found my interest and then I will create this statement. I don't know if it's the way you should do it, but that's how I approached it.
Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong to it. I don't know why, but one of the things I found more interesting is you using spray paint.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because here in Europe, maybe because the emphasis on street art is so intense in Europe. So I just assume now everybody, when I hear a can, like they have some, background in graffiti or something. Did you? Or?
I didn't, man.
No,
like,
okay.
Not at all.
So it's just a medium for you.
Like for me, it's just a medium. Like I was, man, I always dreamed of going out and do some tags and like become a rebel, but I was never a rebel. So it would have been like super like lying to my own reality.
Yeah.
But I love spray paint, man. Like it's mainly like as you were saying, like the contrast between like texture and like forms and shapes and colors. Like I think spray paint gives you so much. Like I can have a super watery flat background and then give like a super thick spray on top, and then you create like a contrast automatically. Like all the drippings and then I sometimes try to do like spray paint on top of like humid paint, and then it cracks and it creates all these like universes in itself that I could never be even able to do by if I wanted to, no? Like
I know, and that gets me too, because that's one of those things like when you're schooled in art, you're one of the first things you learn is like don't use your oil mediums over your water mediums.
Yeah.
But you're kind of missing out on some really interesting textural effects for the sake of, and that's a discussion we've had a lot here about archivalness.
Yeah.
Because you want your work to last 100 years or 200 years.
Yeah.
Which is a bit kind of audacious, right? To sit there and be like, this is going to be my legacy.
I think every artist has that a bit. Like I think we are all super egocentric, and I think we should not deny it. Like by the time you realize that you want to create stuff that everyone should see, and you think it's like
Yeah, right.
quite
That in and of
egocentric,
itself is an ego act.
It's already
Yeah.
already it.
Look at me, look at me.
And
Right.
I think the idea of transcending, yeah, for sure. But I think if you have that always in your mind, and that's the only means like of why you're doing what you're doing, you for sure will lose so much. Like I sometimes mix, like, yeah, I put my oil paint on top, like my acrylics on top of my oil paint sometimes. Yeah, kill me, I don't know.
Right.
Probably in 20, 30 years it will fall off, but man,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I
it's
like that.
part of it, you know.
Yeah, it is. I like that ephemeral quality. It's like I remember seeing one time at it was in the MoMA, I think, in San Francisco, and they had I can't remember which the title of it. They had a large. Well, all Jenny Salvo's work is large, but one of her paintings were on the figure. She had painted the entire side of the figure white, and it was all cracking. And my assumption was she probably used like a flake white or something, because it had a different consistency, and obviously it dried faster than the underneath.
Yeah.
And my first reaction was like, oh my god, she didn't even think about that, which was the schooling in my head.
Yeah, totally.
But then after that passed and I was listening to myself, I'm like, man, that looks really interesting, because you don't see skin crack unless it's a very old person exposed to the sun or something. It's like not what I would imagine with flesh. And I was like, wow, that's really amazing. Yeah. It's not going to last very long. Yeah,
but also flesh doesn't, you know. Like
exactly. Exactly. It was quite literally mimicking flesh in that sense.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Like I think we are so schooled on like art has to be immortal, and like the ephemeras of life should like don't apply to the arts. Right. That we sometimes just stop trying new things. Like I know that if I put like my acrylics on top of my oil, they're gonna end up falling off or cracking. I know, but probably that's what I want. You know, like right. Why can't it be a possibility?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. For example, we are always burning stuff to create like nice effects, and like yeah, I know that's not the.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of burning happening here.
Yeah. But it's cool.
Yeah. And how did you move into like with the neon, and then you were showing me earlier the steel sculptures, the sculptures of the head. Like how did those things come about? Yeah, like I've been like constantly interested in trying new branches of the arts. Like not necessarily I don't necessarily know why before I do it, but then I do it, and then I'm like, okay, that's why that's why I did it. Like for example, I have translated my portraits into sculptures, into like these new like paintings with neon light, even into jewelry and T-shirts and stuff like that. So it's like for me, it's a little bit more touching some aspects that are not necessarily creative, but it's about branding and marketing ourselves as artists. I think it's necessary to try new places where we don't feel too comfortable. No, like as a part of branding as an artist,
to brand yourself. Like for example, like branding yourself, like in the sense like I'm doing the portraits and I'm only doing the portraits and this kind of thing. That's probably one, but also like to market yourself to, for example, if I only paint, people in the art scene are gonna see my work, but if I put it on a shirt or put it on a jewelry or I don't know, then I'm gonna reach to a whole new market that probably would not know me in another way. But
do you think that only works or works better when you have an image, like you have a very iconic image? So it seems to me that kind of lends itself to that, as opposed to like, let's say you did these portraits as paintings, but then as sculpture pieces you did ducks. That doesn't really work.
I don't think it would work that much.
Right, so you're saying like that works when you have a very iconic thing, so now you're taking that and branching it out.
I think since I was very like young and seeing how choosing the art the arts as a life, as a career or whatever, can actually be very hard, because I grew up with like watching how hard it can be, but also how amazing it can be. I thought to myself, like, okay, I'm gonna try to make it also like not only about the arts. I'm gonna try new things. I'm gonna make it work. And then I realized that one of those ways was to I don't know, if you have so many different things in your creative aspects as an artist, you become like a branding nightmare for your customers.
Right.
If you think about the marketing side only.
Right.
No, like let's say if I do a portrait, but then my sculptures are dogs, you as my client are gonna be a bit confused. You're gonna be like, okay, is that the same guy, or this like another artist that is making dogs and this other is making portraits? Like having that in mind, I decided to stick to the portraits, not only because they were the most the thing I really liked the most, but also because I thought I'm gonna work in to get people to understand my personal language and my pictorial language and recognize it as mine. Like and then when I got to that point, I said I'm gonna explode this image that I have created, and that now I really feel that it's mine, and I'm gonna show it to the world. No, like how am I gonna do that? Not only with paintings or with sculptures or not. I'm gonna try to reach other markets, and then I did like jewelry, and then it's like you start creating connections with other creatives that you thought you would never do, like with jewelries or with fashion designers and stuff. And before you know it, your own creative background or life starts also growing and improving. Now you start seeing things in a different perspective. Like I had zero idea about, for example, the fashion world, and now I admire it so much after I've seen how freaking hard it is.
It's crazy hard.
So it's just a matter, I think, of wanting to try new things. I think that's what got me to this.
So maybe first it was the satisfy an artistic urge. And then you found this way of how it fits into the commerce side.
Yeah, like at the end we all need to eat from what we're doing. So.
Do you think, because I feel like you're in a bit of a unique position because your father was a professional artist, made his living that way. Do you think is that shaped how you view it? Because there's a lot of, you've encountered like you're going to have that group of artists who are, commerce makes it ugly. Then you have certain artists that are just like all they think about is money. They think of art as a product. Did that help shape your understanding early on?
I think totally it did. Like for example, when I decided to be an artist, my dad was the first one that told me not to be an artist. Like
I've heard that story so many times from people. That, he was like, "Don't do it."
Yeah, all my friends in the art school, they were like, "Man, it must have been so easy for you because your dad was an artist."
Right.
And
nope.
they're like, "No, man, it was the opposite. Like he really didn't want to." And it doesn't mean that he doesn't support my career, or that he doesn't believe that I could do it or not. But he knew how hard it was.
Yeah.
But what he didn't know is that I also knew. I saw it. I saw it while
he didn't
growing
take that
up.
into account. Yeah, you lived it just as much as he did.
Yeah, totally. And then he, like for example, I had on one side my father, which is an amazing artist, and but he's also such an artist that he's terrible at administration, and he's like all about like enjoying life, and when you have money you should spend it, and like all this. Then on the other side I have my mom, which is like such a beautiful, amazing woman, that she made his production actually matter. Like he managed to get with the economy of an artist to make a family to actually exist. So then I learned from both. I learned.
So you're a synthesis of the two.
I think I am. Like for example, I sometimes get into arguments with my dad because his structure outside of the art scene is not that concrete. I think when it comes to administration, let's say. And but I know that I got that from my mom 100%. So I know how to save my money, and I know how to invest my money, and that's
Nice.
something that I think really helped me a lot. And not only because my father was an artist, but because my family was about the arts. Like my mom is not an artist, but she managed to make the administration work for an artist.
That's amazing. That's such a difficult thing.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. But at the end, it was like, for example, I learned so much from my dad, but I also learned a lot of what not to do through a lot of things that he managed to teach me. I learned a lot of things, like how exactly we need to do them. I also learned, like, for example, that galleries can be assholes, and they can, like, I saw all these while growing up, so I learned it from, like, first hand. So when I got to the art school, I knew I had a bit of an leverage above the other kids, because I knew how it worked.
Right.
It didn't mean that I was better or worse as an artist, but I also knew that it's not only about how good you are.
Right, and that's the most important thing.
And that, I think,
that's nobody realizes that in school.
You don't realize that.
No.
And then I sort of knew it, and I obviously learned so much about, like, the creative aspects. I would be, I think, only like 5 years old, and I was already painting his backgrounds as a, like, playful way, and he would put me in the studio to mix colors and shit like that. Yeah. So obviously you learn things, no? So yeah, I think it totally molded of, like, who I am, to have grown with an artist dad. Yeah, man, and I really appreciate it, like, totally.
Yeah, that side of commerce, I think, is probably the most important. I think I remember one director from my school, he had told us, I think it was like the last day of school, and I think he took some pleasure in saying it, but he was telling us how that we're going to see in the next year, if we keep in touch with people, you'll see this funnel effect of people, like, you'll have a certain percentage that stop painting within that year. Okay. And then in that next remaining year, you'll see them fall off, till eventually, if you last 10 years down the line, you're just going to be one or two of you from the class, right? And this is on the last day. But he was saying, and that's one of the reasons why, is because nobody is prepared. And in a way, you can't really teach that either, the business side of it. But it's so shocking to people coming out of school, where all of a sudden you're like,
it's totally shocking.
Either I don't believe that we should be making money on this and art is art, or, like, you just don't know how to navigate that landscape of commerce. It's crazy, and there's almost, it's not to say it's impossible, but don't you feel like, because I often feel like the art world is this weird, like, lawlessness. It feels like the Wild West, and that there's not a lot of rules to it. Like, how really crazy is it that you can just choose the price of your work? Yeah,
it's crazy. But, well, if the market doesn't pay it, then it doesn't
right. I
really
mean, the
work.
market will help whittle you down, but there's no, like, that's a big question for people coming out. It's like, what do I ask for my work?
Yeah, totally. Like, I think, for example, that's one of the hardest questions. Like, I sometimes get that a lot from colleague artists that are starting, and they say, like, man, how much does my work worth? And I'm like, man, how the hell do I know? Right. Like, but then I obviously give them, like, some tips on how to try to do it, and it's not like just one rule. It's like, as you say, it's like a wild west where there's not many rules.
Right.
At the end, it sort of summarizes that if you can say that your work is 20,000 euros, but if no one pays it, then it's actually not.
It's not 20,000 euros. Right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, obviously, like, if you're starting, also these kind of things don't make too much sense. It's like, okay, I see this guy selling for 25,000 euros, and I'm his same age. Probably it should work. My work is worth that. It's like, yeah, no, it doesn't work like that.
Right.
Like, it's, and I think if it was so easy to explain it, it would also be way more boring. So,
yeah, that's a good optimistic way of looking at it.
I always try to be optimistic.
You're the most optimistic person I've ever met, I think. I like that. I tend not to be.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like obviously, I have some questions myself and struggles and stuff, and it's sometimes hard to be optimistic. But at the end, as when you decide to become an artist, like yeah, it's gonna be hard. You're gonna have to sacrifice a lot, but there's so much of enjoying and shit. Like man,
Yeah.
this thing that is going on right now, like we're like just chilling, talking, having an amazing conversation. Just when we finish, we're gonna have a nice beer and like chat with the other artists and
Yeah.
talk
And
about
eat some
like
food.
and eat some food. So yeah, then it's yeah, man. If you ask your lawyer friends, probably they won't be doing this.
I think that's a perfect way to end it. So I think that's a really good point. All right, we'll end it there. Anything you want to add at the end before we go and cook some dinner?
Not necessarily. Just like let's keep enjoying, man.
Right on. Thank you, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, bro.
All right, and we're out.